What up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Heart of a Lion podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and you have just stepped into the Lion's Den. If this is your first time tuning in, then go ahead and hit that follow or the subscribe button from wherever you're listening to the podcast, as well as to make sure you go ahead and follow the page on Instagram at HoAL podcast. Again, that's at HoAL podcast. If you're a returning listener, then thank you for tuning in again. Thank you for coming back for some more. The support is always appreciated. Now, I told y'all in the last episode that I wanted to start shouting out a creative each episode just to, help support others. I gotta stop saying, and I gotta stop saying, let me gather my thoughts. Support sharing content, sharing the content of other creatives, as well as just support verbally is free. There's no cost to it. So if I can share the content of others or support them verbally, then I'm going to give them that free promotion just so other people can hear what it is that they're doing and support them. If they want to listen, go ahead and listen. If they want to follow, go ahead and follow, or whatever that looks like. But there's a homie of mine that I've known for a long time who is really like family. Our families grew up together. His name is Maurice, and he has a podcast called Mo or Less, the Mo or Less podcast. And Maurice definitely has a powerful testimony, and he talks a bit about that on his podcast. I'm not gonna lie, I have not been able to hear every episode, but what I've heard, I have enjoyed so far. So again, go ahead and support him. He's on Instagram. He's on Instagram at, what is this? More or Less podcast. He's on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And listen, enjoy. Now, today I am actually on this episode anyway. When you hear this episode, I would have just gotten back from vacation. And one thing that I do not like to do, right? One thing that I do not like to do is I do not like to release information like I will be gone on vacation and then go on vacation, because me going on vacation, yes, I don't think there's anything wrong with telling people that you're going, but as far as like me putting that information out on social media, like that ain't nobody's business, because like I don't want anybody to be like, oh yeah, I saw you were on vacation and I'm here too, so I figured I'd reach out. No, just let me enjoy my vacation, or you never really know how crazy people are. So even when I'm on vacation, I never post where I am. Like if I share photos or videos, I always wait until I get back and then share that content. I never post that I'm on vacation while I'm on vacation. I post that I was on vacation when I get back. So again, sorry for the long-winded response or answer, but yes, I am just getting back from vacation and I'm sure I had a great time. Today, what I want to talk about is I want to talk about the vine and the branches, right? John 15, which this is my favorite passage collective of scriptures, like my favorite chapter in the Bible. And I think part of the reason why I love this passage so much, and I've taught on this, I've preached on this, it's just because of how much weight is in it. And every time I read it, I get something new out of it. Every time I read it, I get like new revelation from it and just something else that can be applied to life. Or I know people who go through things, or even when I go through things, I'm reminded of the scripture and just how important this scripture is. So if you've never read John 15, 1-8, I'll read it now so you can open your Bibles and go along with me. But it says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you, unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered. And they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask what you desire and it shall be done for you. But by this, my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. So the important thing that I want you all to realize is that it says back in verse 2, every branch that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes that it may be more fruitful. And you may be wondering, what does the word prune mean? Like, what does that mean? I have no idea what that means. And the word prune means to cut off or cut back parts for better shape or for more fruitful growth. And you wonder why. It's like, why does this have to be cut back? Why does this have to be cut off? And I remember I was in high school. So about 20 years ago when I was in high school, like my hair had grown long, but had gotten to a point where I had split ends, and I really needed to have my hair trimmed. It needed to be cut back. I didn't need to cut it off, but I needed to cut it back. And because I had the split ends, I needed to get it trimmed. Because I did not get it trimmed, then my hair it wouldn't get any longer. Like it would grow, it grew, but it kept splitting, and it just never got any longer. The way I was looking at it was like, I don't want my hair trimmed. I grew it this long. I don't want it to be trimmed because I don't want my hair to be any shorter. I can put my hair in a ponytail. If I trim it, I won't be able to put it in a ponytail. I'm thinking all these different things. But because I chose to stay in that spot with my hair would not get any longer. It wasn't until I eventually locked my hair that my hair grew long. But also, even with my hair having the split ends, because I had the split ends, it also took my hair a lot longer to lock than it should have. Now, what am I saying? Why am I using this hair example? I'm using this example because many times there are many of us who have things, who have things where the Lord needs to cut back on something or cut back in a particular area in our life, but we're like, no, God, I don't want to lose out on this. No, God, I don't want to lose this, or I don't want this taken away from me, or I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. Not realizing that if we only just allowed the Lord to cut back on something, cut back on, even if it's just a little bit of something, if we allowed the Lord to cut back on some things or cut back on some people, it would produce far more growth. You know, if we say, if we need to cut back on the amount of time that we spend watching TV, or if we need to cut back on the amount of time that we're hanging out with friends, if we need to cut back on the amount of money we're spending, let's go there. If we cut back on the amount of money we're spending, we can save so much more and be more fruitful in other areas. We can save. If we cut back on the amount of food that we go out and buy, or that we go out and eat, whatever, we can save more money to have more things for our home. We can save more things to put towards other things that are far more important. But again, we don't want to cut back on certain things. We don't want to cut back on certain urges. We don't want to cut back on certain desires. But we need to, because it's far better for us to cut back on certain things. And then there are certain things where the Lord wants us to cut back on it. But if we don't cut back on it, the Lord will sometimes just cut them off completely. You know, I know for me, there was this time where I had this, man, okay, wasn't planning on going here, but we're going here. There was this time where I had a struggle with Twitter, or really back in the day with Twitter and Instagram. And the part of the issue that I had was, I just found myself so consumed with Twitter and Instagram that I found myself in areas of Twitter and Instagram where I didn't really need to be, especially as a Christian. And because I found myself in these areas, I found myself spending too much time there. And I kept feeling like, man, I need to cut this. I just need to like put my phone down and take a break from this. Man, I just need to, unfollow these certain people. But I didn't want to cut back from who I follow. I didn't want to cut back from spending time on it. And then one day the Lord led me to completely delete and deactivate those accounts altogether. So for a long time, I think for over 6 years or something like that, I didn't have an Instagram. I had only gotten Instagram again because I had a photography business. I didn't have Twitter for a long time. But again, it was because I wasn't willing to cut back in those certain areas. The Lord was like, all right, now I got to cut it off. And it's the same thing with people as well. There are certain people in our lives that we just need to cut back on the amount of time we spend with them, because not necessarily because they're doing anything wrong, but just because we need to spend a little bit more time with God. But sometimes it's everything to do wrong, but the Lord needs us to cut back on the amount of time we spend with them, so that way we can spend more time with him, so that way we can see what the issues are. But because we love certain people so much, we fail to see the different red flags that are going on with them. And we'll never see it as long as we're not spending time with the Father. If all of our time is consumed with them, then we'll never see it if we're not spending time with the Father. And sometimes what I feel like one of the things that the Lord showed me earlier this year, just in this specific passage, is that sometimes, well, let me say this. So again, like we're producing growth. The Lord prunes us. He cuts back on certain things to produce more growth. He cuts off certain things to produce more growth. And sometimes what it is that people can see the growth that we've made. They can see the fruitfulness in our lives. And sometimes people want to get close to us, but they can't get close to us because of the thorns that are connected to us, because of the people that are connected to us. Sometimes I remember before I got married, my wife, one of the reasons why my wife wasn't interested in a relationship with me was because of the people, because of the women that were connected to me. And it wasn't until I was finally at a place where I'm like, yeah, I'm done with this, that then she was interested in progressing and moving forward with me. Sometimes like you can't enjoy a healthier lifestyle if you still allow yourselves to be connected to the things that are making you unhealthy. You can't enjoy or expect to have a six pack if you're still connected to the things that give you a dad bod, or connected to the things that give you a beer belly. Like you can't expect to have a fruitful prayer life or an active prayer life if you're still connected to the idea or the thought of, man, I just really want to sleep in, or man, I would rather do this. I would rather play video games. I would rather go to the movies. I would rather hang out. I would rather do whatever else than to spend time with God. So we have to take a step back. Sometimes we have to cut back on certain things. Sometimes you have to cut back certain things just so that the Lord can show you why it needs to be cut off. And sometimes you need to cut back on certain things just for it to produce growth. And sometimes certain things just need to be cut off completely. Like if there are certain things like you just know, like, man, this ain't for me. Like, dog, like, or the Lord shows you like this ain't for you. Like, you got to cut it off. For me, like there are certain things for me where the Lord just showed me that, I need to cut this off. Like for me, secular music is one of those things where it was like, the Lord was like, you need to cut this off. Cussing is one of those things where the Lord showed me, man, you just need to cut this off. Drinking is one of the things for me where the Lord was like, you got to cut this off. So there were certain people who were in my life who I loved, or I was cool with, or I used to kick it with. And the Lord was like, you got to cut them off, or you need to spend less time with these people, or you don't need to be around these people at all. But I had to be obedient to what the Lord was telling me. I had to hear what the Lord was telling me. And the only way I was going to do that was by spending time with him. Right. And sometimes, for me, I'm not gonna lie, like I didn't always know how to do that, or I'll be like, Lord, because like I was the type person who didn't mind speaking my mind with certain things, but at the same time, I didn't know how to cut people off. So I would have like the Lord would literally like remove people from around me in such a way where it'd be like they just start doing their own thing and I just don't hear from them. So it isolated me in such a way where I didn't have a choice but to spend time with God. So, but it's when we allow ourselves to be pruned and when we allow ourselves to produce, when we allow ourselves to be pruned, we produce more fruit. And when we produce more fruit, we can do more for the kingdom of God. We can be used more by God. You know, when we spend more time in our prayer closet, it charges us and activates us and help us grow in ways that we couldn't have imagined, you know, but it can also lead us to an opportunity to pray more for people, to find ourselves in a way where people can be healed through our prayer. They can be encouraged through our prayer. They can be delivered from our prayers, but we have to grow. You know, we have to be pruned in those areas, and pruning does not always feel good. Pruning does not always feel good. Trust me when I tell you, pruning does not always feel good. One of the scariest prayers I prayed, or I thought it was scary anyway, was I prayed, Lord, show me who my real friends are. And it was like almost immediately after I prayed that, it was like I had people who I thought were friends who cut me off, or they just, you know, went off and started doing their own thing, or they just ain't rock with me like that no more, or just different things were happening. And I'm like, man, this sucks. But the Lord had to remove them from my life in order for me to grow. You know, he had to do that in order for me to grow. You know, and at the same time, you know, like I don't want anybody to be connected to me that's going to weigh me down. I don't want anybody to be connected to me that has a greater influence on me than I do on them. I don't want to be connected to anybody that's going to lead me to hell. Right? You know, like I'm not saying that anybody is perfect. I'm not saying that we can't have conversations or relationships with people who are non-believers. I'm not saying that at all. You know, I think that, you know, it's important for us to have certain dialogues or just to have certain relationships, to have certain friendships. But at the same time, like, you know, I have family and friends who aren't saved or don't go to church, and that is what it is. You know, I can see them at the family functions. I can see them at these different places. I can have a conversation on the phone, and that's cool. But I'm not going anywhere that isn't like that don't rock with my spirit. Like I'm not going to nobody's club. I'm not going to no lounge. I'm not going to these different places. Like I know how to have fun as a Christian. I know how to have fun all by myself at that as well. You know, I don't have to drink to have fun. I don't have to smoke to have fun. Like I don't have to do these extra curricular things to have fun. I know how to have a good time. But if you need those things to have a good time, or you want to do those things to have a good time, God bless you. I'll see you next time around. So again, like there are certain things that certain people that had to be removed from me or from around me in order for God to really get a hold of me, in order for me to really grow, in order for me to really just be in the presence of God. And sometimes you don't really realize, how much you grew or how much you needed to grow, or how much more you needed God until you find yourself in a season of isolation, or until you find yourself in an area where everybody else is gone and it's just me now, you know, or God, this hurts, but now I see why you removed it. I know people who are going through things right now, and they're not my stories to tell, but I know people who are going through things right now who are really, really being pruned, and what they're going through sucks. Like it truly, truly sucks. I also know that what God has for them is truly amazing. Like the fruit that's going to come out of these seasons for them, it's going to be something special. Again, what they're going through sucks. Sometimes we have to go through stuff in order to see the fruit. Sometimes we have to go through things in order to understand why we went through it in the first place. Sometimes we go through things just for other people to see that they if this person can make it, if Jay can make it, then I can too. Sometimes we got to go through things just because if we didn't go through it, we may not have made it. But I would rather be pruned. I would rather be pruned by God than to not be pruned and live a fruitless life. Because again, it says, if anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they are gathered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. I think about different decisions that I make and the difference in how I feel when I make certain decisions based on whether God was included in that decision or not. Like there are certain times when I feel stressed because I made a decision, but I did it without God. Or sometimes I feel frustrated. But when I include God in that decision making process, I have so much more peace. I have so much more joy. I'm so carefree because I included God in that process, or because I included God in everyday life, or because I included God in whatever. You can't be fruitful without him. Yeah, some people got certain things and it looks cool and it looks nice, but do you have God? Do you know God? In the same way, there are people who seem like they have it all. They may not know God, or they don't know God. There's some people who have nothing and don't know God. But there are also people who don't have nothing and do know God. And I can tell you that there are testimonies of people who don't know God, but they say that they are richer than the people who do. I remember there was two things. There was a poll of people who had won the lottery. I think they did like 10 people. And they said of the 10 people, only one person who won the lottery was still a millionaire, and was because he was a Christian and he put his faith in God and he didn't squander everything. And then there was one other guy who became a millionaire and lost it all, and said that he was happier with nothing than he was with all that money. So do not compare yourself to other people. Do not compare yourself to other people at all. Sometimes we be cutting off branches or cutting back on branches or cutting off things on our own branch just because we want to be like other people. No, we are not made in the image of man. We are not made in the image of whoever somebody else is. We are made in the image of God. I want to be like God, who God called me to be. Let him shape me and mold me. I'm not trying to be like nobody else. I'm not trying to be like no celebrity. I'm not trying to be like no person. Yeah, we can emulate certain things, but at the end of the day, it's about how God sees us, not how man sees us. Not even about how we see us. Because we be getting ourselves caught up in all caught up in our emotions because of different things that happen. So yeah, sometimes the pruning process sucks. But I needed to cut this person off because they weren't fruitful for my life, or this area of my life wasn't producing fruit. Or this person was just all they were doing was causing me financial heartache, emotional heartache, spiritual heartache, mental it was detrimental to my mental health. We have to look at these different things. It doesn't, and I'm not saying that things are easier with God, because things can definitely be rough with God. But at the end of the day, a life with God is more beneficial and produces more fruit than a life without him. Don't let these celebrities have you fooled and think that the grass is greener on the other side and, all that you have is good and this and that. Like, nah. And just something else to keep in mind as well, because, sometimes, we cut things off or we cut things back. But Matthew 12:43-45 talks about how the spirit left out of a man and went to go find a new place and could find none, and came back to the original place and found it swept clean. And it came back with 7 demons stronger than itself and wreaked havoc on it and left the house worse off than what it was before. Why am I sharing this? I'm sharing this because if you cut things off, or if you cut things off from your life, or if God cut things off from your life that were not producing fruit, I mean things like ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, ex-husband, wife, ex-friendships, that were really producing no fruit, or they were detrimental to your health, physical health, mental health, spiritual health, like what, financial health, whatever. You do not need to invite these people back in, because you can find yourself being worse off than what you were before. Now, I'm speaking from experience, and it's not just my testimony, but it's other people's testimonies too. Just like the things that they've gone through because of inviting certain people back into their life, whether it's a friendship or a relationship. You have to be mindful, and you have to trust God in everything. And when these certain things are cut off from your life, you have to fill that void with more of God. If you do not fill these voids with more of God, then you will find yourself just slipping right back into the same situation, or find yourself filling that void with something else that just is producing no fruit in your life. You can't cut off TV, but then spend all your time on social media. You can't, cut off going to the club, but you spend all your time going to the lounge. Like you have to, or another example, now I go to church, like I can't just give up those things that I did in the world and not do anything. Like I have to, if I know my church is having a service, it's like, let me go to the service. Or if I know that they have this young adult group, let me go to this young adult group. Like whatever that thing is, but allow the Holy Spirit to lead you. Allow God to lead you in everything. So anyway, that's it that I got. That's all for today, y'all. That is all for today. But again, I love John 15. I could talk about John 15 all day. It's one of my favorite passages, and I get so much out of it. Even some of the stuff that I was talking about today, like I got out of that just today. So anyway, that's it. That's all, y'all. Until next time. Peace.